SummerSlam is tonight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. We have 3 matches set for the kickoff show. Kickoff starts at 5 p.m. Soon you're going to be waking up from your bender the night before, waking up at 11 a.m., and we're going to have to put our TV on to watch the beginning of these shows. They're getting earlier and earlier and earlier, it feels like. And how people like Asuka and Sasha Banks are left off the SummerSlam card is beyond me. I mean, I guess the world just needed that one extra Baron Corbin Finn Balor match that we've all been dying to see. It's funny, the guys from the Gorilla Position podcast, they did a bunch of in-person interviews with different WWE talent, and they have an interview with Finn Balor up on their channel. And, you know, when he said this, it was partially tongue-in-cheek, but somebody took the clip and put it on Twitter. He asked Finn, so how are you feeling about your SummerSlam match here with Constable Baron Corbin? Are you excited? You have to see the answer that Balor gives. He gives the most unenthusiastic, oh yeah, I'm like, I don't think anybody could possibly look any less enthusiastic than he did, talking about how excited he is for this match. He can hardly contain himself. Neither can all of us. But the kickoff has the B Team defending their Raw Tag Team titles against the Revival. The B Team beat the Revival, and they beat Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt on Monday night, but the Revival had the match won. They had the match won with the Shatter Machine, not realizing that Curtis Axel had made a blind tag, and he promptly sent Scott Dawson out of the ring, stole the pin on Bray Wyatt, and so the Revival are getting their rematch here. The Revival, I'm picking the Revival. I think it's time to give them a shot, give them a run with the belts. The B Team, it was a cute little thing. Okay, let's just be done with this. I'm going with the Revival to win the belts here. The Revival used the old Heart Attack finish from the Hart Foundation during that match on Monday as a tribute, clearly, to Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And would you believe that there were people online giving them shit about not using it as a finish? There were people giving them grief and criticizing the fact that, oh, they used the Heart Attack as like a setup move or just like a transition move in a match. How disrespectful. You have to be fucking brain dead if you think that they did that for any reason other than to pay tribute to the Hart Foundation, and that it was disrespectful in any way. It doesn't matter if it's at the beginning of the match, if it's at the middle of the match, or if it's at the end of the match. They have their own finish. They're not going to use somebody else's finish. They have their own. I thought it was nice. I thought it was very nice and very classy on their part to do that. And somehow people were able to find fault with it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Cedric Alexander defends the Cruiserweight Championship against Drew Gulak. Gulak earned this opportunity by winning a fatal 4-way a few weeks ago over Mustafa Ali, Hideo Itami, and TJP. I don't see Gulak being the one to take the title from Cedric, so I'm picking Alexander to retain. And we have Zelina Vega and Andrade Cien Almas taking on Rusev and Lana. Rusev has gone from the WWE Championship match last month to the kickoff show this month. But he is a babyface now, which I think is something that's been long overdue, so I'm happy about that at least. I have to think that Aiden English gets involved here in some way. And it can be, it could then be the impetus for a Rusev Aiden English program, which would kind of feel like a downgrade for Rusev, but they have to play the story out somehow. And Andrade then moves on to bigger things, which he absolutely should be doing. So I think Almas, frankly, should have a title around his waist by or before WrestleMania. That's my prediction. I'll make that a prediction. Almas will have gold around his waist no later than WrestleMania. But I'm picking him and Zelina here in this match. So then the main card starts at 7 p.m. We have Elias. He is going to have a segment on the show where he sings his greatest song. I don't know if that's better or worse than him having an actual match with Bobby Lashley. I'm sure we'll see Lashley. This is a very weird SummerSlam card, not just because of the people who are not on the card. And Asuka and Sasha are just two of many. I mean, you can go through a bunch of other names from Bobby Roode, who's been doing, whatever he's been doing lately with Mojo Rawley. But even stuff like Randy Orton not being inserted into the U.S. title match and making it a triple threat. Kind of odd that they didn't do that. Odd that they didn't add Drew McIntyre to the IC title match, although I guess now we know why, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But there's a lot of people not actually wrestling on this show, and yet we have a pretty full card here. So I guess it's just a lot of talent, and they just don't have room and don't know what to do with everybody. And Bobby Lashley is another one here. He's been feuding with Elias now for weeks. You would think, well, this is building to a match. Nope. It's building to another Raw TV segment here on this pay-per-view. But Elias was originally supposed to have a concert at the Gramercy Theater in Manhattan, which I passed that on my way to work every single day. I didn't see his name on the marquee. But this was put together very late in the game. It was a very last-minute thing. They canceled it. They canceled it with the story being that WWE management wanted him instead to perform at SummerSlam, I guess on the grandest stage. I see reports online, people thinking, well, low ticket sales. Maybe, but, it would not shock me, given how little notice there was for this, that they never even planned on really following through on this. I mean, I'm not basing this on anything anybody has said to me. I'm just saying it would not surprise me if we come to find out that there never really was going to be a concert. And the plan all along was to just announce this, and, we'll have to refund people's tickets, obviously, because people paid, so we'll have to give refunds and stuff, but just to sort of advance the gimmick and make him out to be a bigger deal. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Finn Balor takes on Constable Baron Corbin. I am not a fan of this feud. They did have a really good match on TV a few weeks ago. Corbin is, look, I think what they're doing here is similar to what they've been doing with Mojo Rawley and Bobby Roode. They're taking two guys in Balor and Roode who are more experienced, and they're having them work with younger guys on the roster that they have big plans for. They obviously see something in Mojo. They're trying to give him a push. Mojo has something. I don't know exactly what it is. Beyond, he's got charisma, but, can he kind of turn that into the whole package where he becomes a really solid in-ring performer and puts the whole thing together? That's what they're trying to do. Silly me, I thought that's always what NXT was for, but I guess not. So they're trying to get him over, and they're using Roode as a way to do that. And I think that's what they've been doing here with Corbin. They said, look, we got to give Corbin some good matches here. Who can we put him in there with that he can maybe learn from, or he can go out there and have kick-ass matches with? And Balor is a very good wrestler, so why not put the two of them together and see what happens? I just can't get excited about a Finn Balor-Baron Corbin feud. I don't care what their goal is here. My goal is just to sit down and watch the television show, and the television show, when they've been feuding now for all these weeks, has not been overly exciting for me. So I would hope that this is the end of their feud. This is a rematch of a rematch, and hopefully the climax of this feud, and hopefully Finn Balor goes over in the end. So I'm picking him to win. We have Carmella defending her SmackDown Women's Championship against Charlotte and Becky Lynch. The Becky Lynch story has been building for many months now. She has been on she was anyway, and I pointed this out, I think, back in June or early July, before it became the storyline that, hey, low-key here, Becky Lynch is on kind of a win streak. Even though she didn't win Money in the Bank, she's been winning a lot of her matches on TV. Then they finally started to draw attention to it, and it slowly built up to her earning herself a championship match. And then Charlotte came back, and they inserted her into the picture. And they obviously have a longer-term story in mind here with Charlotte and Becky. I don't know if there's a turn. I don't know if it just leads to a friendly one-on-one match at the Evolution pay-per-view, which I would suspect, whether somebody turns or not, that's probably where we're headed here. But we'll see. But my gut tells me here, my pick, that's why I'm picking Carmella. I am picking Carmella to retain. I know a lot of you are going to groan and grunt at that. She is not overly well-liked. There are a lot of people who cannot wait to see her stripped of this championship by somebody. I think that there is a story that they're going to be telling where Charlotte and Becky sort of cancel each other out. I don't know if one sort of leads the other to the losing fall, and it leads to dissension between them. It's building to something, and I think the end result here is that Carmella is the beneficiary. I think she ekes out a win, and she retains her championship, and she holds it for another month or two before she drops it. Braun Strowman puts his Money in the Bank contract on the line against Kevin Owens, with the stipulation that Strowman can lose the contract even if he loses the match by countout or disqualification. One idea for a finish to the main event that I have thought about, and I've seen this theory batted around by a few of you on my timeline as well, is for Kevin Owens to beat Braun Strowman. Somehow, some way, he will beat Braun. And I'm not making my prediction yet. I'm just putting this idea out there. He wins Money in the Bank. He cashes in on a victorious Roman Reigns after Roman beats Brock. And he wins the championship with an assist from Paul Heyman. So Heyman doesn't even have to turn on Lesnar, which I'm still hoping that they don't do. Lesnar can just lose. And Roman wins, and then out comes Owens, and we end up with an Owens-Paul Heyman alliance, and they've got a stranglehold on the Universal title. Now, the critique there is, well, does Kevin Owens really even need Paul Heyman? What does he need Paul Heyman for? Kevin Owens can talk just fine. He doesn't need a mouthpiece. True, he doesn't. But neither did CM Punk. And that turned out to be a really fun, entertaining pairing, the two of them. Just because Paul Heyman would be most useful to somebody who isn't very good at speaking for themselves doesn't mean that they can't align him with someone who can. If the pairing makes sense. So I like that idea. That's just one of many ideas that have been pitched and that I was thinking about. I like the idea, but I still don't think Strowman is losing the briefcase. I'm picking Braun. I think Braun will win. I know, poor Kevin Owens, he's been getting his ass kicked now for the last 3 months by this guy. Technically, in their last match, in that cage match, Kevin Owens won. He did win, right? He beat Braun Strowman. He hit the floor first. But, it's bad enough that they have not put the championship on Strowman yet, as over as he still is. They've had a lot of opportunities to do so. He still has yet to be the champion. To then turn around and screw him out of the contract, I think would be a mistake. And I also, and this is a minor thing here, but maybe it means something, they've already announced the match for Kevin Owens for that big Australian pay-per-view, and it is a pay-per-view now, in October. It's going to be Kevin Owens against John Cena. Now, of course, the card is subject to change. They could always change it, but that is the match right now. I don't see Kevin Owens winning the Universal title and going into the Australian show to defend against John Cena. I just don't see it. Now, all that being said, I have a little twist on a finish to the main event that I'll get into here in a second, but Braun, I think, is going to keep that briefcase, and that'll factor into the end of the show here. The New Day battle the Bludgeon Brothers for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Tired as I am of seeing New Day always in the tag team title picture, I then see a match like the one they had a couple of weeks ago on TV with The Bar, and I am reminded of just how good these three really are. I am quite bored lately, to be honest, with the Bludgeon Brothers. I'd like to see them switch the belts back to New Day here. I'm picking New Day to win. But then have New Day either feud with The Bar or preferably a new team. I feel like the Authors of Pain, honestly, could benefit from a roster switch. I don't know how you pull that off, but they could probably benefit from being moved over to SmackDown. Maybe there's a team in NXT. I don't know, that Undisputed Era, obviously they're the tag champs down there. I don't know that they're ready to bring them up just yet. Although it wouldn't be the first time that they brought up somebody from NXT that was already a champion in NXT. Kevin Owens, when he was called up, I believe, was the NXT champion, and then he dropped the belt 2 months later. So it would not be unprecedented for them if they wanted to call up, let's say, the Undisputed Era, even though they have the tag belts. Adam Cole, of course, just lost his North American belt. They could do that. I just think we need new teams. They've got to find a way to freshen things up here. But, some team like the Authors of Pain, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they're such a great team. What great wrestlers they are. But they have something there. They're not great, but they've been misused, and I think they could use a second chance on a different show. They could use a reset of sorts. We have Daniel Bryan taking on The Miz. This is one of the two matches I am most looking forward to on this show. This and the AJ Styles match. They aired three separate video packages for this match last Tuesday. Not even the Universal title match has 3 video packages for it, but this match does. They went all the way back to the very first season of NXT 8 years ago. The very first season of NXT when Bryan debuted as Miz's rookie. And then later when he beat Miz on Raw for the very first time, they had highlights of that. And they covered Bryan's retirement and the infamous Talking Smack segment where Bryan walked off the set when Miz told him he should quit and go wrestle in bingo halls if he's mad that WWE isn't going to clear him. And Bryan admitted he did want to leave. He actually did legit want to leave the company and go wrestle somewhere else, but he had made a commitment to Vince McMahon. He wanted to keep his word that he was going to finish out his contract. So then they had highlights of him being made the general manager of SmackDown, and of course they covered his return and Miz being drafted back to SmackDown. This is that rare match that has a year, you talk about long term, has a years-long build to it, not just a few weeks or even a couple of months. This match has a history that goes back almost a decade. You know all those matches they've done in the past, like I can remember them promoting the Last Man Standing match in 2004 at the Royal Rumble between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And they built that thing up, oh, this is 10 years in the making. 10 years in the making. And I said, why do you do that? Like, I know 10 years is a nice round number and it sounds nice. It's 2004, okay? This feud does not go back to 1994. It doesn't go back to 1995 or even 1996. But they sort of exaggerate and that's just one example of it. Here, it's not an exaggeration. These guys don't like each other going all the way back to 2010, which is 8 years, which is, if you want to stretch it, almost a decade. Legit, without any exaggeration. So that's how far back things go between these guys. And I think when Bryan came back and people think of fantasy matches for him, they automatically think of like great wrestlers. Oh, I can't wait to see him against Samoa Joe. I can't wait to see him against AJ Styles. Man, I can't wait to see him against Nakamura and Seth Rollins and even guys in NXT like Johnny Gargano and Ricochet. The Miz is not the most technically gifted guy they have on that roster, but he is probably the single best opponent right now for Daniel Bryan, and it's all because of the story that they have that goes back so long. And there was a time when nobody thought that match was going to happen. We didn't think Bryan was ever going to wrestle again in this company, right? And if it doesn't happen in WWE, it's not going to happen because Miz is not going anywhere. Miz is a lifer in that company. Bryan, though, I don't see Bryan. Bryan, I could see easily leaving and going and working somewhere else if he really, really wanted to. Miz, I can't see that. Miz is fully and completely a product of the WWE system. And he has done very well for himself there, and he's just one of those lifers. So we didn't think the match would happen. Now it is. Now, as far as the outcome of the match is concerned, and again, you know, when I talk about this being a big match and all that, I think it has a big match feel to it. It's not Hogan Warrior. It's not Austin Rock. I'm not trying to make it out to be something on that scale. But I do think it's a big match. Now, as far as the outcome of the match, it could hinge on his contract status. Now, Bryan says that he's 90% sure he's going to re-sign with the company. It could happen any week now. The holdup is that he's got a lawyer, which, Vince McMahon doesn't like lawyers. He can't be too happy about that. But Bryan, for the very first time in his life, he says he's got a lawyer looking over the contract, looking over the fine print and the terms. And so that's sort of holding things up a little bit. But it sounds like it's almost a done deal. And I figured he was not going anywhere, especially once they announced that showcase mode for the new video game is based around him. I figured, all right, well, this is basically a done deal at this point. I think Miz is winning this match regardless of whether he stays or leaves. I don't even think it matters at this point. I think it would be better to have Miz win to keep the feud going and make people want to see Bryan beat his ass even more. So I also think that we see the wives get involved in this match. I think they'll be there, maybe ringside, sitting in the crowd or something, but I think Maurice and Brie, I have a feeling Maurice and Brie are in some way, shape, or form going to end up getting involved in this match. But believe me, this is not the end of this feud. Jeff Hardy challenges Shinsuke Nakamura for the United States Championship. I said it before, I'm surprised they didn't add Orton to make it a triple threat, but safe to say that he will probably be involved here in some way. But, again, his beef is with Hardy. His mission is to destroy all those who the fans like. And so I think he costs Hardy the match, and Nakamura retains. Dolph Ziggler defends the Intercontinental title against Seth Rollins. Last Monday, we saw the return of the game, the King of Kings, the cerebral assassin, Dean Ambrose, on TV after 8 months away, recovering from a triceps tear. Rollins introduced him as his backup for tonight's match to combat Drew McIntyre, who will be standing in Dolph Ziggler's corner because, of course, the best role for Drew McIntyre is standing in the corner on your second biggest show of the year, but I digress. But Ambrose came out on Monday night. He was looking good, man. He looked jacked. He got a new buzz cut, heel, beard. He's looking like a guy who was just released from prison and is still pretty pissed off about it. And yes, he did look a lot like Triple H. So what we have, and actually so does Ziggler, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know what the hell he's doing. He straightened his hair. Ziggler comes out there. He's looking like 2002 Reign of Terror Triple H out there. I think clearly these guys have figured out that flattery is the best way to get over. But, it's good to see Ambrose back and not as Wacky Dean. I'm done with Wacky Dean Ambrose. I'm ready for, don't drop the soap, prison Ambrose. I'm ready for that. I think the heel turn is coming. I don't think it happens tonight. I don't think it happens at SummerSlam. Instead, I think he helps combat Drew, and I think he helps Seth win the championship. I think Rollins regains the IC title tonight, only then for tomorrow night on Raw for Ambrose to turn on him. So I think the turn is coming. I just think they're going to save it for Monday and not do it tonight. And then that sets up your next title feud for the Intercontinental title. And with Ziggler losing, I think, and depending on how the loss goes down, maybe it's a miscommunication, maybe McIntyre hits a Claymore kick and accidentally kicks Ziggler. However it goes down, I think that begins to, it's sort of the first crack in the armor between him and McIntyre, which leads to an eventual split. And I say eventual meaning maybe not this week, but very soon. They'll split the two of them up, and McIntyre can sort of go off on his own finally. But that's clearly where all roads, I think, are leading between those two. And once Ziggler loses that title, I don't know that he has much incentive really to, McIntyre that is, to protect him anymore. So maybe it's just a matter of Ziggler loses, he's a loser, and, it's sort of baggage that McIntyre feels he doesn't need, and he branches off on his own. But that's how I see things playing out. By the way, on his podcast, Chris Jericho claims that he pitched the idea to WWE management for an IC champion versus IC champion match, pitting himself against Seth Rollins back when Rollins was still the IC champion. He claims that the company was receptive to the idea. They listened to it, and they were, I guess, considering it. In his mind, they were maybe considering it, and then nobody called him back. And he said his idea was that the match would end in a DQ, because you can't have a clear winner, one way or the other, obviously. But it would end in a DQ with whoever is going to challenge Seth next for his title coming out and interfering. And that was the idea that he came up with. And this is actually not the first time that idea has been pitched. It was 3 years ago, if you remember. Daniel Bryan pitched the exact same idea for an Intercontinental Champion versus Intercontinental Champion match, WWE versus New Japan, pitting himself against Shinsuke Nakamura. He said that they could even simulcast it. They could simulcast it on New Japan World and the WWE Network. And I'm sure after Vince McMahon at the time said, "Who is Nakamura?" and everybody laughed, it was probably never spoken of again. But that would have been a pretty cool idea. So, after this MSG sellout with Ring of Honor and New Japan, I doubt that WWE is going to be very receptive to doing much of anything with New Japan. Ronda Rousey takes on Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's title. Ronda had a close encounter with Batman on Monday night. He got a little too close for comfort. Yes, a fucking bat somehow got into the building and wanted a ringside seat during the opening match on Monday with Alexa Bliss and Ember Moon. Ronda was ringside cheering on Ember when the bat flew right next to her. You could see her get all freaked out and say, "Oh my God, it's a bat." Or I think it was like, "Oh my God, that's a bat." Which is more than what I would probably be able to say in a situation like that. The only words out of my mouth would be, "Oh shit." And I would be that guy sprinting through the crowd, up the concourse, out the exit door, and into an Uber on my way to the airport to get me as far away as possible. But that's me. Natty obviously is still mourning her father's death. I don't know if she will be at the show tonight in Rousey's corner. Whether she is or she isn't, I've been saying for months that they've been waiting for that one moment where Ronda Rousey takes Alexa Bliss by the arm and breaks her arm. And Alexa does the trick where the arm comes out of the socket and it looks all nasty and gnarly, and they probably get a great visual for a Sports Center moment out of it. Because most people, if they watch a show like SportsCenter and they hear that Ronda Rousey broke this poor girl's arm and they see her arm all twisted up to shit, they don't know that this girl is double jointed or whatever. They're just looking at it going, ooh, that's nasty. So I think that's the moment they're going for. That should be the moment they're going for here. I think Ronda should win. I think she will win. She is my pick to win her first championship here. And then they can build to Ronda and Natty at the Evolution show in October. And it's a similar situation as to Charlotte and Becky. You could have one turn on the other out of jealousy, but you don't even have to. There doesn't have to be a turn. You don't have to go turn crazy. It could be a friendly competition. Maybe that leads to dissension between them. But whether one goes heel or not, I think that would be the obvious match to shoot for. Would be Natty and Ronda for the championship, probably in October at that show. And then it's probably very likely going to be champion versus champion. If I had to venture a guess here at WrestleMania next year, Ronda as the Raw Women's Champion facing Charlotte as the SmackDown Women's Champion. But I don't think this match here should go very long. The less selling Ronda has to do for Alexa Bliss, the better. Although Bliss now is having a match with Trish Stratus in a couple of months, so maybe they want to keep her looking strong. And I think back to WrestleMania, though, when they had Nia Jax for like 8 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it was, selling for Alexa Bliss, which was quite ridiculous. So we'll see, but Ronda should go over here. We have AJ Styles defending the WWE Championship against Samoa Joe. This is the other match I'm really looking forward to the most. The build-up here has been very simple. Joe has made it personal. He has brought up AJ's family and said that AJ is married to the road more than he is his own wife. He doesn't care about his kids. Every time he comes out here and talks about how he's away from home and his wife is basically a single parent, all that means is that AJ doesn't care about them. So, yeah, they've been making this personal. And then on Tuesday, Joe comes out dressed up in a suit, and he's got a letter in his hand. Now, earlier in the show, AJ had name-dropped his wife. His wife's name is Wendy, and so he had already mentioned this. He planted that seed. Joe comes out, he says, I have a letter in my hand. I have a letter in my hand here from your biggest fan, or formerly your biggest fan. This person is no longer your biggest fan. And the gist of it is that the fan, quote-unquote, believes that AJ never really wanted to get married. He never really wanted to have any kids. He's such a great champion because he'll do anything to stay away from his family. Now, I thought what was odd about this is AJ didn't really get angry. He almost had like a smile, like he was laughing. As this went on, you would think, especially once they got to the punchline at the end, I expected him to just bolt out of the ring after Joe, and he never did. So I thought that was kind of weird. If that were me, if I were in his shoes and somebody said that about my wife or my family, that's the first thing I would do. But anyway, the letter goes on here. The fan hopes that Joe wins at SummerSlam so that AJ can know what it feels like to lose the thing he cares the most about, because this fan lost him a long time ago. And he says the letter is signed Wendy Styles. I so wish that Joe would have just said the letter was from a random fan signed by a woman named Claire. I know less than maybe 1,000 people, if that, watching the show would have even gotten that reference. But fuck, that would have been fantastic. That would have been fantastic. Maybe she'll be front row. Maybe she'll be at the Barclays Center tonight. Claire Lynch. She'll be ringside. So anyway, we have come to a point, I feel like, where the championship should come off of AJ. He's been champion now for a very long time. I guess going back to November of last year when he beat Jinder Mahal, right before he had that excellent match with Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, or Survivor Series, rather. But I think the time has come. And not only has the time come for him to lose the championship and chase it for a change, but I think Joe is more than deserving of getting a run with the belt. He's been sidelined at the most, shittiest of times by freak injuries. I mean, look at what happened to him this year. He missed WrestleMania because he was wrestling Titus O'Neil, and his heel popped or something, some weird foot injury, the way he planted his foot or something. I mean, it was crazy. But he's healthy now, and his promos have always been excellent. I mean, Joe is probably the best talker in the company. I mean, you could say Heyman, I guess, but Heyman's not around enough, I think, to really justify that title. I would say Joe is the best talker they have in the company right now. in terms of full-time talent anyway. Joe deserves a run with the belt. AJ could chase him. They could have another 1 or 2 matches after this. I think it's time. And I'm going with Samoa Joe to win the championship. And finally, speak of the devil, Brock Lesnar defends the Universal title against Roman Reigns. There was an article on Yahoo Sports this week. I'm sure many of you saw this, and those of you who haven't will love this. There was an article on Yahoo with the headline, "Why Roman Reigns is the champion WWE fans don't realize they truly need." And in the article, there is a quote from Roman where he refers to all of his haters as actually being closet lovers of his. They are more connected, he says. They are more connected to me than their so-called favorites. So that should please the fans tonight at the Barclays Center, the ones who read that interview. I thought that was quite the quote. Last Monday, Paul Heyman showed up on Raw. He confronted Roman Reigns. He name-dropped the Usos. He called them the future of the tag team division, which was an odd statement to make given that the Usos have been around the tag team division now for 8 years. That's like WWE building the Rock Hogan match at WrestleMania 18 around this idea of wrestling's past against wrestling's future. And by that point, Rock was mostly done as a full-time performer. So anyway, very odd. But he was setting up to put Reigns over here in this promo, and he said, look, he made an offer to him. He said, I could give away all of Brock Lesnar's secrets. He put his hand out for Roman to shake it. Of course, he didn't. Heyman offered his services to him. He talked about riding with Afa and Sika back in the day, Sika, of course, being Roman's father. And this is not the first time that Heyman has brought up Sika's name. He did so many years ago before their first match, I believe, at WrestleMania 31. It might have actually been when they had the Raw episode that got snowed out. And they had to improvise, and they had a series of interviews at the WWE headquarters, at their studios. And that might have been the first time that I can remember Heyman really bringing up and talking about the Samoan bloodline and, your father and all of that stuff. And so that goes back, 3.5 years at this point. And I think that's important to keep in mind here because Heyman then said something to Roman in Samoan. And I wish I would dust off my Samoan so I could translate for you, but I have forgotten everything I have learned in the past about the language. But he said something to him in Samoan. Reigns seemed like he was taken aback by this. Perhaps it was just the fact that Paul Heyman actually knew how to say something in Samoan. Maybe that's why he had that dumb look on his face. But Heyman handed him a piece of paper. He said, look, you don't have to give me an answer until Sunday. And at that point, Roman kind of opened the letter. He was looking at it. And Heyman pulled out a can of pepper spray. And he sprayed Reigns in the eyes. Now, I was intrigued by this little twist. Until Heyman pulled out the pepper spray and basically maced him in the face. Brock Lesnar came out. Roman now is completely blinded. He puts Reigns out with a guillotine choke. Comes back to the ring, gives him an F5, lays him out. I know some of you like this. It wasn't bad, but I thought they killed a lot of the intrigue around this match once Heyman exposed that it was all just a setup. Now, maybe it's all going to make sense after tonight why they did what they did, the way they did it, but when this segment was over, I was disappointed. I thought they should have let it linger until tonight. What was in the letter? What's Roman going to do? He's not going to go with Heyman, but, maybe he will. What's in that letter? We still don't know what was in that letter. It is still possible that we might find out, or it could be completely forgotten about, but there is still the possibility we will find out what was in there. Now, there's so many different ways that this could go down. Brock could just win and keep the title until WrestleMania just to piss everybody off. That would be the worst outcome here. Roman could just win the championship straight up and get the big pyro and confetti celebration in Brooklyn, which would also be pretty underwhelming at this point. But I'm of the mind at this point, just fucking get it over with already. It's like they just tease it and oh, we're going to do it. And then, Vince changes his mind. And just do it already. If you're going to do it, just do it. I don't know why you have to drag this out for so long. So that's one possibility. We have the possibility that Heyman could turn on Brock Lesnar and could go with Roman Reigns after all. Roman could win the title and everybody's all upset. And then, Braun Strowman could come out to cash in Money in the Bank. And maybe Heyman even aligns with Braun Strowman and goes with him. Maybe Kevin Owens does win the briefcase and cashes in on Reigns and aligns with Heyman, like I said earlier. There's a lot of different possibilities here. Here's the idea that I like the most. And shout out to Donnie, actually, on Twitter, one of our listeners, because he had the same idea. And I think it's a really good one. I would put the chances of it happening at less than 50%, probably a lot less than 50%. But here it is. And I think the seeds have been planted for this already. I think that Reigns finally slays the beast and wins the championship. So I'm picking Roman to win here, okay? Now, that's not my big idea, okay? I also think that Braun Strowman, he'll keep the briefcase. He will cash in. And everybody is going to wet their pants thinking, okay, he's going to take the title from Roman. We're going to get the happy ending finish. Only the Usos get involved with an assist from Paul Heyman. They all help Roman retain. Roman beats Braun Strowman. And what we end up with is something of a Samoan alliance with Roman Reigns as your heel champion, the Usos sort of as his backup in a way, and Paul Heyman as their advocate. Heyman brought up the Usos on Monday. I thought that was kind of odd that he did that, but he did. He's talked many times before, as I said, about the Samoans and the family and all of them. And it would also be a way, if they did this, to keep Heyman on television, maybe not even every single week, but to keep Heyman around even if Lesnar does not sign a new deal and just goes to the UFC. Now, I know the Usos are SmackDown guys, so you'd have to square that circle somehow. That's the one thing I haven't really figured out yet. But it just works. The Usos are not involved in any program right now. They're not even on the SummerSlam card. This entire pitch, by the way, is a takeoff of an idea that I already pitched on this podcast 2 years ago. Only this is with the addition of Heyman. But this is an idea that I've had before that I think you could easily implement tonight if they wanted to. I like the idea. And you're losing a babyface technically in Roman Reigns. I mean, I know not everybody cheers for the guy, but he's their biggest de facto babyface, I guess, next to Braun on this show. But you've got Braun. Braun is still over. Despite the booking and he hasn't really been doing much, he is still, over like Rover when he comes out and he gets these massive reactions. So you can sacrifice one because you have another, right? It's like WWE got really lucky in the late 90s that they had Austin and Rock at the same time. There is no Austin and Rock in this company now. Don't get me wrong. Roman Reigns is not Steve Austin or The Rock, and neither is Braun Strowman. But it's the closest thing I could think of because you've got these two guys. Now, Roman is booed mostly, but they see him as a big babyface. And then they have an actual huge babyface in Strowman. And I'd even throw Rollins in there too, although he's not really in the main event mix right now. But Rollins is also very popular. But they were fortunate enough back then where they could turn one because they had the other. You didn't need two huge babyfaces at the same time. I look at the top of the scene here on this Raw brand, and I'm just thinking to myself, Brock's not full-time. Who is the biggest heel right now on that roster? It's Roman Reigns, but he's not a heel. You know what I mean? Like, if you turn him, I guess there's always the risk that people will, start cheering him, but I don't think so. But I just think, the story is there, and you've got Braun is the guy who could chase. It's not like if you turn Roman, what do? You got Braun. And eventually you'll have Rollins, if you want to go down that path and have Rollins, challenging Roman. So again, how likely is this to happen? Not very likely. But I'm going for broke here. That's my prediction. Either way, Roman wins. And so there you go. So that's your SummerSlam card. Long card. A lot of matches. I'll have a full review of the show up on the YouTube channel early tomorrow morning. So if you want to see the SummerSlam review video, it will be up then. You can get it there on the channel. And as always, you can find a link to download the MP3 if you want to stream. If you're, on your commute or whatever, you can't watch on YouTube. You have to go to the YouTube video. The link will be in the video description.